Sophie had always believed she knew everything about Alex. 4 years of dating had painted a perfect picture in her mind. Shared vacations to exotic destinations, Instagram posts that made friends envious, and dinners where they laughed as if nothing could touch them. But lately, small things had begun to disturb that image. A phone that buzzed incessantly with calls he would take in the bathroom, a laptop that suddenly required a new password he refused to share, and the subtle vagueness of late-night work calls that never seemed to end. Sophie tried to dismiss these suspicions as paranoia, telling herself that perfection sometimes bred insecurity, but the unease in her stomach refused to disappear. One evening, the argument started as nothing more than a petty disagreement over which movie to watch. Alex, unusually distant, left the room, muttering that he had things to handle. Sophie's heart sank, the argument forgotten, replaced by the gnawing worry that she might finally be seeing what she feared. Hours later, a soft knock at the door jolted her out of her restless pacing. On the doorstep was a small package, neatly wrapped, with a note in Alex's handwriting. "You need to see this before you accuse me of anything." Curiosity mingled with apprehension as Sophie tore the paper off, revealing a box that was heavier than she expected. Inside were envelopes, labeled meticulously with dates, folders of photographs, and USB drives neatly stacked in chronological order. Her hands trembled as she picked the first envelope. The first letter was addressed to a woman named Elise, someone Sophie had never heard of. The tone was intimate, personal, full of affection Alex had never shown Sophie. Every line read like a dagger twisting in her chest. Plans for future meetings, promises of love, excuses for missed dates with Sophie, all meticulously documented. Shaking, Sophie inserted the first USB into her laptop. Video files opened, each one showing Alex in cafes, at dinner, even walking hand in hand with Elise. The betrayal was tangible. He smiled at her, whispered words she had assumed were reserved for Sophie, words that now made Sophie's stomach turn. Every video, every photograph was timed to avoid overlap with Sophie, yet the meticulousness made it clear this had been going on for months. The heartbreak was overwhelming, yet Sophie could not look away. As she scrolled further, she found spreadsheets Alex had kept, tracking financial transactions that didn't add up. Secret payments to hotels, extravagant dinners, even shared gifts that Sophie never received. He had not just betrayed her emotionally. He had lied to her about money, about plans, about the very life they were building together. And the last folder. Sophie hesitated. Her hands were shaking as she opened the folder marked Engagement Plans. Inside were flight tickets, hotel bookings, even an apartment lease in another city, all under Alex's name and Elise's name, timed perfectly to coincide with their upcoming engagement party. He had been planning to vanish the very night they were meant to celebrate their future together. Sophie sank to the floor, the weight of reality crushing her. She felt dizzy, her heart pounding so violently it seemed to echo in her ears. How could the man she had trusted with her heart and life be planning a completely separate life with someone else? Every memory they had shared, the vacations, the quiet nights, the laughter, felt tainted, rewritten by his deception. Her phone buzzed incessantly with missed calls from Alex, but she could not bring herself to answer. The man who had once been her everything was now a stranger, a master of lies hiding behind the mask of perfection. Hours passed. The room was littered with photographs, letters, and files. Sophie felt an overwhelming mixture of grief, anger, and disbelief. She thought of confronting him, of demanding an explanation, but part of her knew that no explanation could undo the months of betrayal. The depth of his lies was a wound too deep for words. Instead, she sat quietly, letting the storm of emotions wash over her, letting herself feel the full magnitude of heartbreak. When Alex finally arrived, expecting perhaps a casual discussion or reconciliation, Sophie did not even look up. He knelt on the floor, pleading, explaining, trying to justify his actions, but every word he spoke sounded hollow against the avalanche of evidence she held in her hands. Sophie's eyes, red from hours of crying, met his for the first time. There was no forgiveness there, no trace of the woman who had once adored him. She handed him back the note he had left, the box, and every single piece of evidence, her voice calm, almost chilling. "You need to see this before you accuse me of anything." "I saw it." Alex's pleas turned into sobs, his confident mask crumbling entirely. For the first time, Sophie saw the man she had loved reduced to a trembling figure of regret, but her own pain was insurmountable. She could not bring herself to stay, to watch him beg. She turned away, leaving the door open just enough for him to realize the finality. Outside, the city lights blurred as Sophie walked into the cold night, each step heavy but liberating. She felt her chest ache, but a strange clarity accompanied the heartbreak. She was free from deception, free from a man who had mastered the art of betrayal. Weeks later, Sophie would replay the moments in her mind, the package, the meticulous evidence, the final confrontation. It haunted her, but it also became her story of awakening. Alex had thought he could live a double life, manipulating both love and truth. But in his attempt to deceive, he had underestimated Sophie's resilience. She had endured the unendurable, witnessed the unimaginable, and survived the betrayal with a strength he could never anticipate. Sophie's heartbreak remained, a raw, pulsing reminder of trust shattered. Yet, amidst the wreckage, she discovered a hard-earned clarity and strength. The world saw her as the girl abandoned, the victim of a perfect life turned nightmare, but Sophie knew the truth. She had the power now. Alex had left the engagement party and a life with Sophie to chase a fantasy that would crumble. She had all the evidence, all the memories, and the cold realization that she was worth more than someone capable of such meticulous betrayal. In the end, Sophie learned the most haunting lesson of all. Love could be a weapon, trust could be a trap, and the people we think we know best are sometimes strangers hiding in plain sight. But heartbreak, no matter how deep, could ignite a fire within, a resolve stronger than the pain of betrayal. And as she closed the door on Alex forever, she felt the first spark of freedom, tempered by the bitter, unforgettable taste of knowing everything, and surviving it.